On April 10th, Square Enix released Final Fantasy VII Remake. The original game came out over 27 years ago, but does this game live up to the game-breaking original or get lost in its shadow? Let's crack into it. Before getting into the gameplay and story, the music in this game, which is what you'll be hearing throughout this video, is fantastic. It is made up from remixes of songs from the original and brand new songs, and it's all great, especially the Collapse Expressway themes, which is what's playing right now. The entire soundtrack seems to fit the tone of the game most of the time. Anyway, this game looks fantastic. I played this game on a base PS4 and it still looks great. The character models look incredibly impressive. I will say, while sometimes the background graphics are not that impressive, you usually don't spend that much time in the same place, so it's not very noticeable. The game seriously looks great, but keeps the similar style to the original. Especially Aerith's house, which looks fantastic and is one of the highlights of the game, despite having 0 fights. The entire atmosphere of the game is incredible, and the graphic and music only get better during the battles. The game covers the first section of the original, right up until they leave Midgar. The game's plot, for those who somehow have heard of it, follows Cloud, an ex-Shinra soldier now working as a mercenary. The game is not turn-based RPG like the original, but it's actually an action RPG. The combat is individual battle-based, switching smoothly into battle controls. The battles are incredibly fun. Each of the 4 playable characters each feel completely unique from one another. Cloud, who is in your party most of the time, is a heavy hitter, doing basic attacks to charge up a special meter before releasing an attack to pull off some sick combos. Aerith and Barret are both long-range attackers, and while they can hit some enemies that others can't, I usually end up leaving them to the CPU to control because they just don't have the DPS the other characters do. Finally is Tifa, who is usually who I lean towards using. Her specials naturally combo, and her limit is extremely good. Battling also allows you to use character abilities even when you're not using them, but their meters charge much slower. Summons are special creatures that you can bring into the battle to fight for you. One problem I have with these summons is how long it takes to summon them. You have to watch the summon cutscene every single time you want to summon them, and a whole other cutscene every time they leave. You'll be using these summons every major battle, so you'll get sick of watching all of these. Different weapons and armors you buy can switch up how you control the character and can be a great change of pace. Materia, which are orbs you can buy and find, allow you to either get unique abilities or use spells. These spells can be incredibly useful in taking down bosses. Speaking of bosses, this game's bosses can range from pretty fun to just really long. One of the worst bosses is the boss house. The house has a ridiculous amount of health, and since at this point your party is only Cloud and Aerith, it'll take you a while. The battling is incredibly fun and gives you many options to take down your enemies. The game is split into 18 chapters, with each chapter being about an hour or 2. The chapters with subquests are obviously longer and can take up to 4 hours if you actually do all the side quests. Many of the subquests are not combat-based and slow down the fast-paced nature of the game. The chapters range in quality, but are all fairly good. One of my favorites is Chapter 4. One of my favorite things about this remake is how it fleshes out some of the characters who didn't get much screen time in the first game. Especially Jessie, Wedge, and Biggs, who only have a few lines in the original, are all very fleshed out here. Chapter 4 is all about going to Jessie's house and learning about her backstory. The way you get there is by motorcycle, and the motorcycle controls extremely well. Something about driving super fast while slashing down enemies never gets old. After which you learn some of Jessie's backstory, which I won't spoil here, and then you get to do a sick fight. Jessie, Biggs, and Wedge all have great chemistry and do a lot of help dialogue in the early game. Also, Chapter 9 is pretty good. The music in this chapter is fantastic, and the change of pace is nice too. Wall Market is incredible, easily my favorite city in the game. Also, the dance minigame and the battle arena, minus the killer house, are fun. This chapter would have been perfect, but the mechanical arms gimmick is incredibly boring. There's also a puzzle and more of an annoyance. Seriously, you used to move objects and get Aerith to the other side, but the arm feels super clunky and feels like you're constantly hitting stuff. Anyway, I also enjoy the last chapter, Chapter 18, but I'll get to that one later. The chapter system feels really natural, even though some are really short compared to some of the longer ones. The game also feels like it slows down to a halt sometimes, but that's to be expected when expanding 6 hours of the original game to a 20-plus hour game. The story, while closely following the original, does excel in the parts that it does differently. Jessie, Biggs, and Wedge, as I said, are actual characters this time, and especially in the first few chapters play a pivotal role. The game is fully voiced and the actors do a pretty good job. There are some awkward breaks before you can actually talk to anybody though. The game does that a lot actually, either making you stand in place or walk slowly while it loads things. This doesn't happen too often though, and they usually fill the space with character dialogue so it's not just empty time. By the way, spoilers are coming up. Here's a timestamp if you want to avoid spoilers. Which, trust me, if you haven't played the game, you want to. So to give a little context, these whispers throughout the game, which looks like ghosts, will stop any events from happening that don't align with the first game. For example, when Cloud isn't supposed to go on the second mission, the whispers come and injure Jessie, so Cloud has to fill in for her. At the end of the game, you learn that Sephiroth has knowledge of his defeat in the original game, so he has you defeat the Arbiter of Fate, meaning that the next part of the remake will not align with the first game. Also, we are shown an alternate reality where Zack Fair from Crisis Core makes it to Midgar alive with Cloud, meaning that Cloud won't wake up and take all of his memories. This ending has been controversial for a few reasons. One, the game doesn't really actually build up to the fight. Barry goes from being scared of a gun to shooting bullets at a god. Now that this game isn't actually going to be a true remake, we never may actually get a complete remake of the original. I will say in the remake's favor, gameplay-wise I quite like the final chapter. The bike returns from the 4th chapter, and the Sephiroth fight is a really sick ending to the game. The fight with Fate is a little repetitive though. As for my opinion on the ending to the story, I do look at it as taking a different route than the original, even if the title of the game is a bit disingenuous. I'm worried that Nomura might pull a Kingdom Hearts and make this game super confusing, and that we will have some reality-bending, time-traveling shenanigans. But let's be honest, the only reason they did this is so we wouldn't be sure if Aerith dies or not. Anyway, the game also shows in the credits Biggs with Jessie's headband on the table, implying that they are alive, whether or not in this timeline is unknown. Anyway, I'm still excited to see where the story goes in the future. So that's the game. I'm super happy with how the remake turned out overall. The gameplay is super fresh and unique. I'm super happy they didn't stick to the old turn-based style. The old style would have not translated as well today and would have kept many new fans away. This game, despite some of its flaws, is still a fantastic game. The gameplay and graphics combine to make a great overall experience for fans of old and those who never got to play the original. Despite the scarce, boring moments, this game manages to keep you invested in the story and the gameplay. I'm giving this game a 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This game was really fun to go through. When I rank games to the end of the season, this game will be fighting for the top. Next week, I'll be reviewing Kid Icarus Uprising. See you then.